great to be joined by Brandon Anderson. He does incredible work over at Action Network, taking a look at the NBA. And Brandon, you much like myself, a D3 alum, we appreciate that on this show, and I always appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, glad to be on. We are in the midst of, all things sports. We got Final Four coming, opening day. So, hey, let's talk some NBA. How about it?
How about it as well? And I want to ask you this first, because we're going to take a look at quite a bit of the futures landscape in terms of both the West and the East, but we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. It's the last 7 or so games for a lot of these teams, give or take a little bit. Are there bigger edges to be had typically from betting game to game when it comes to this portion of the year? Or can it be a little bit murky with some teams that have locked up playoff seeding and then sometimes you get rest situations? Because I think that it really does vary by sport when you get down to the final few games.
Yeah, I think it's murky season. You've got to be really careful out there. If anything, it's information betting season. You can watch, suddenly 3 or 4 starters for one team are just sitting a game out because they're resting on the cusp of the playoffs, because one guy's going to be out, and now the domino, they're like, well, let's just rest everybody and not really go for it in a game we don't need anyway. Whatever reason, if you can act quickly on information, I think that's where you maybe find an edge out here. But otherwise, yeah, it's tricky out here. And common mistake this time of the year on NBA schedule is you look and you say, okay, well, my team's got, say, 49 wins. Here's our 6 games left. Well, those are 5 easy wins. So we've got 54. We just need 1 or 2 of these other games. It doesn't always go that way. Things don't always play out toward the end. So, yeah, I think it's a time to be very careful. Choose your spot on props. This is a good time. You get these random, like PJ Washington, 43 points last night. Get these weird outbursts. So it's a good time to have some fun with that. But otherwise, you're kind of just keeping an eye on the playoffs, much like the players, I think.
Yep, I think that that's such a good point to make, because we all know that when it comes to the NFL, Week 18 just becomes a cluster trying to bet on that, and you could get a lot of it when it comes to the final few games of the NBA season. Being a baseball bettor, Game 162 is always the biggest crapshoot that you're ever going to find as well, so it feels like that is much of the same here in the NBA. And to your point, Brandon, being able to take a look at who's actually going to be in/out can yield some great results there. And what has not been yielding great results as well, as we make our segue, is Kyrie Irving on the Dallas Mavericks. It is at the point where the Dallas Mavericks, forget reaching the actual playoffs, might not be in the play-in game. They were able to steady the ship with a win a couple days ago, but what have you made of the Dallas Mavericks? And is this a chance to just continue to fade this team until further notice? Or is there maybe a little bit of value on them if they can somehow, some way, for lack of a better term, to find soul? Because that's the biggest thing. They just look lifeless.
Yeah, you nailed it. And look, another loss tonight to the Sixers. They're in big trouble right now. They are on the outside, not like you said, not of the playoffs, of the postseason, of the play-in. They're on the outside. And the offense hasn't been good enough, considering the defense is not going to be good. We know Dallas doesn't have the horses to hang on defense. They're going to have to outscore you. And sure, Kyrie, Luka, the gang, they can put up 120 on you, but they're going to give up the same 120, 125 pretty easily with that defense. It's not working well. And haven't we seen this? Like, how many teams now has Kyrie come on to and we have everything solved? And then, we don't anymore. I think the Mavs are in big trouble. Looking at the play-in race, I don't think I would count them out of making the play-in. I think we're looking at probably Pelicans, Thunder, Mavericks. 2 of those 3, I think, probably end up in that 9 versus 10 game. But even if you get in that game, you got to win, maybe on the road in an elimination game, and then you got to win again against the 7 or 8 seed, which maybe could end up being the Lakers, could still be the Warriors or the Clippers. You're going to win twice just to get in, just to earn the right to face Nikola Jokic and those Nuggets. So I think Dallas is so much on the brink here that there's a real argument. I don't think they will, but there's an argument of looking the other direction and saying, hey, you know what? What if we just protect our draft pick here? What if we just go the other way, try this again, and admit the Kyrie thing didn't work out? So it's a real mess for sure.
Yeah, and I just get sick of hearing so many people trying to stand up for Kyrie Irving. It's one thing when it happens at a stop or two, but when it's every single time, and if it's not one thing, it's the other, and it just becomes a trend like it has, yeah, it's not great to say the least. But, well, out there in the West, it has been very interesting. And I know that you've been someone that has been quite a bit on the Denver Nuggets, and I really do like what I've seen on the Denver Nuggets, but how much do you think home court is really going to be playing in the playoffs? Because the one thing that I've really noticed with the West is that darn near nobody can win on the road this year. The only team that entered into the week more than one game above 500 on the road is actually the Sacramento Kings, and I think when it comes to the West, seeding itself might be the biggest thing to take a look at when gauging futures.
Yeah, and those Kings, they are about to, right as we speak, are clinching finally that playoff berth that
they're
waited
destroying
so
the
long
Rockets.
for. Yeah, they took care of business on that one. On the road, we might add. So you're right. They're the one team that can go, and look, I know it shouldn't be a hard game, but for the rest of the West, that has not gone well for them. Just any road game hasn't gone well. I think it matters that Denver is a very good team at home. We know teams like Memphis are really good at home. Phoenix has a really strong home road split. Denver is not only at home, but Denver has that altitude advantage too, which we know also always comes into play. Just conditioning, and you get these long, grueling series. Of course, your important players are playing more minutes in the playoffs. That's where the altitude and conditioning can come in even more there. That stuff matters. The seeding, though, the key thing that hurts the Nuggets on the seeding is that Phoenix is starting to look pretty well locked into that 4 seed, or at least that 4-5 seed game, aka Denver in the second round, probably is going to have to play the Suns, who, of course, also, as we're speaking, just got Kevin Durant back. And he, of course, just fits right in seamlessly and is doing his thing again because Kevin Durant gets buckets. That's what he does. So I think the seeding is not necessarily in Denver's favor. I mean, you could look at a spot where Denver might end up getting the 1 seed, coasting all season to that 1 seed, and then look up, and there in the first round are the 8 seed Los Angeles Lakers and the now healthy LeBron and Anthony Davis. And then, as if that wasn't enough, you get either the Suns with Durant or the Warriors, the defending champions. That could be your reward in the second round. The bracket is not going to do any favors there. I think this close to the end, there's really no reason for me to bet the Nuggets now. I like them, but the bracket can really only make things worse for them, and there's no reason to rush and get it right now. So you kind of have looking really hard at that bracket. And on the flip side, everybody wants in that Grizzlies Kings 2-3 side, right? If the Nuggets, the Suns, maybe the Warriors are all on the other side, you got to find your sleeper on that other half. Is it the Wolves? Is it the Warriors if they slept? So I think that bracket out west is really the thing everyone's watching these last couple of weeks.
And you mentioned something very big, the fact that the Phoenix Suns, they do get back to Kevin Durant looking very solid in a game that is happening with the final few minutes as we are doing this live between they and the Minnesota Timberwolves. And with the Phoenix Suns, I think that Kevin Durant is massive for them. I do feel like it's a little bit too lofty that the adjustment that we've seen in the futures market, though. Right now, the Phoenix Suns, in order to win the West at DraftKings, is plus 220. I'm not sure how you properly gauge the Phoenix Suns, but this just feels like a little bit overreactionary considering the fact that with the Phoenix Suns, they still don't have as much chemistry as darn near everyone else that they're going to be playing in the playoffs.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk right now about it's just Kevin Durant. He'll just slot him in, he'll get his buckets, and that's true. Durant will get his buckets, but you still have to learn how to play that way. We're going to see Chris Paul and Devin Booker make some adjustments. Obviously, you have to. One thing I like to keep playing the Devin Booker assist over. He's hit that in the 3 games with Durant before. I think he hit it tonight. We're live, so I'll have to check in afterward. But his potential assists have really gone up. It's a different team. You're changing your role. You're learning your defense a little differently. We just haven't seen in NBA history teams learn on the fly. Here's how I'm going to build my team and do this. It just doesn't happen, especially coming from a middle or a lower seed. NBA history says that is not how you win a championship. The books are saying otherwise, and I just don't know how we can put our money there until we've seen more of it.
I'm in total agreement with you. The last time we've seen a blockbuster trade mid-season result in a title, well, we really haven't. So I'm in agreement with you there. Brandon Anderson, he does amazing work over at Action Network, and we talked quite a bit about the West in this last segment. Coming up next, we got to give some love to the East. We talked a lot about the West in the last segment, and we're going to be diving into the East here in a second, but how about if we sort of cross it too with this discussion, because it is very debatable. The odds between Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid for MVP, very, very split down the middle. Right now I'm seeing at DraftKings, Jokic right around plus 115, Joel Embiid plus 125. If you want to take a shot on Giannis Antetokounmpo, you're able to get that at plus 350 as well. So he's starting to make his way into this race. But how do you view this one? Because I think the biggest factor when I take a look at MVP is whether or not there's going to be voter fatigue with Nikola Jokic, with him having won each of the last 2 MVP awards.
It's messy. It has gotten very messy, very contentious. Fans of their teams on social media really going hard for their guy. And the mess, really, the part that's kind of feels gross about it is that it's the attacking the other candidates. These are 3 really good players having really good seasons, but it's like, well, I can't make my case for my guy unless I put down the other guys first. And it's just kind of a little messy that way. I think it's interesting that Giannis is still considered the 3rd guy. Like, he's the guy that we kind of add in, like, oh, well, we should mention him. When the reality is, if you just skip the NBA season, woke up today, and you were like, well, let's see here. How's the NBA doing? Oh, I see the Bucks are number 1 in the standings. Wait, really? Chris Middleton basically hasn't played all season? Man, Giannis must be having an amazing season then. He must be the MVP. That would be the obvious case that you'd be making if you just kind of zoomed and checked in on the season right now. Instead, we got the Jokic Embiid debate, and we're going back and forth. Of course, Monday was supposed to be the day we finally figured out who the real favorite was. We're going to have Jokic and Embiid play each other, until we didn't. We had all the articles that came out, and then suddenly Embiid was out, and now we're not at that game anymore. And would you look at that? Embiid was back healthy, playing again tonight. So it's every day it's something. Tomorrow is the big day, I think. Tomorrow morning, the NBA straw poll comes out. Tim Bontemps does that straw poll, and be ready. When that straw poll drops, we're going to have a clear idea for now on who the favorite is, who the voters are thinking of with a couple weeks left. We've seen in the past, when that straw poll drops, the last one, odds on books go quickly.
Yes.
So I think if we get tomorrow morning, if we get a Jokic is still the clear favorite, or I think more likely, if I had to guess, I think if we get a whole bunch of voters that say, hey, 60, 70% are on the Embiid side, I think that that number on DraftKings, that plus number, is not going to be a plus for long. So we've got to be ready. And I think that more than on the court, more than anything else, that straw poll result might actually end up driving where this race goes in a strange way.
Yep, I vividly remember last year when that straw poll dropped, because I remember it was between Embiid and Jokic once again last year, and it was looking like Embiid was a pretty solid favorite. After that straw poll, it was like, oh, and here's Nikola Jokic going from like plus $2 to minus money in a snap. I mean, that was how quickly it went. So such a good point there, and that's what you want to be taking a look at in terms of odds to win MVP. You can do all the stat diving that you want. You want to be looking at that straw poll, and that is the biggest thing that you want to be taking a look at right now. And as you mentioned, that is going to be dropping Thursday in the AM. And something else that you want to be taking a look at is with the East, certainly the Milwaukee Bucks have been that clear number 1 team, but who could be their biggest challenger at this point? Because we have seen the Celtics have a little bit of a drop-off from what was just a flamethrower start to the year. Is there maybe anyone outside of the Celtics and the 76ers that could be a little bit of a challenger and could cause for a little bit of a speed bump, say in round 2 of the playoffs for the Bucks?
Honestly, I don't think so. I mean, it's always possible, but if Giannis is healthy, if the Bucks stay healthy, and the defense, as nasty as that's been, the offense really has only kind of been average, but that's been good enough in the playoffs because Giannis just does even more than. I think the answer you would look at, if you're an advanced stats nerd like me, the answer you want to come up with is the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm looking at Basketball Reference right now. The Cleveland Cavaliers are second in the entire NBA in SRS. They're second in net rating. They've got all the fancy metrics say, hey, watch out. That 4-seed Cavs team, they could be the team to come after you. I think you dig in a little bit more, though. I'm not saying that they're paper tigers by any stretch, but that number, the net rating, the SRS, those advanced metrics, they're really inflated by that the Cavs are absolutely demolishing sub 500 teams, which is great. It's a great way to have a great defense, and it's a great way to pile up regular season wins. But guess who's not under 500? Giannis and the Bucks. Not even close. And the Cavs are a very different looking profile if you look just above those sort of the teams in the record. So I think the Cavs, even against the Knicks, I think that could be a closer series than we think. If I had to pick one team outside of those top three that could beat any of the top three, I think it's the Heat. I think Miami, as bad as they've looked for much of the year, Jimmy Butler, give me Jimmy in any series, in any game. Jimmy Butler can be the best player on the court. He's been incredible this season. Again, he has been really, since that bubble finals that he made, he's been great since then. I think that he should be legitimately an MVP ballot consideration. Not the winner, but I think he should be in contention for that 5th spot on the ballot, possibly. So I think you get Butler in a series, you get Miami's defense. They're going to punch you in the mouth, punch you again. Going to go to 6 at least. And we've seen them in these series before. I think if I'm Milwaukee, Boston, Philly, any one of those teams, I just don't want Miami. Anyone else I feel pretty good about. I don't want to face Jimmy Butler.
And with the Miami Heat as well, they're one of the best defensive teams in the NBA as well. And I think that is of significance, especially when it comes to a playoff scenario. And we've talked a lot about some of the teams that might be a little bit lower down the list. When it comes to the Bucks and the Celtics, they are, in my opinion, the clear top 2 in the East. And then you've got the Philadelphia 76ers currently sitting at number 3. Do you think that we could see a little bit of a different result here in the Eastern Conference Finals? Because I know that you mentioned something very big, the fact that Chris Middleton has been out throughout much of the season for the Milwaukee Bucks. And I would argue that if Middleton doesn't get hurt last year, the Bucks perhaps win that Eastern Conference, and hey, who knows what happens in an NBA final from there. And with the Milwaukee Bucks, I just take a look at things right now, and it's hard for me to bet against them in terms of futures market and to think that anyone else is able to rise up and take them down prior to the NBA finals unless if another injury like that happens.
Yeah, I agree. The Bucks for me are number 1 with the bullet right now. They are in a tier of their own. They are the 1 seed. That really matters in the East, and it looks like they're probably going to be moving in pretty safely into that 1 seed. It matters in the East because if the Cavs don't belong in that top group, then the Milwaukee Bucks only have to play one of the Celtics or Sixers. Those teams got to play each other in the second round. Milwaukee can watch them beat up on each other. We saw that last year when Milwaukee was in the other side of the bracket and had that Milwaukee-Boston series. Boston was better than Miami. We all know that. But look how close Boston got to losing to Miami because they just had almost nothing left. They had this long, grueling battle. I agree. Middleton in that series maybe swings the outcome, certainly plays a big role in that. I think you have to like the Bucks. I certainly like Milwaukee against any of the possible Western opponents. We've seen Milwaukee against Phoenix, not the Durant version, obviously. We know Milwaukee matches up pretty well with Denver. I think the Bucks are the team to beat. It's just about where's the spot, where we're going to find our spot to pick them. I like them. I know the Sixers have made a push here. I know the Celtics are kind of fading, but usually find their way come playoff time. They're battle tested. But if you look just since about January, middle of the month in January, Milwaukee rises above the entire rest of the league. Their net rating, their metrics, the offense has come around. They finally look like the one team that we've been waiting for this season, if you just look at the last 2 months. So I think that has to be the answer until proven otherwise.
Since holding up that number 4, that fan of the Phoenix Suns that has been going very well for the Milwaukee Bucks. So we will see if that magic continues.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.